What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Strength Coach Rants. I'm your host, Connor Lyons, and today, with the seasons of most sports being upon us, we're going to talk about conditioning and those stupid conditioning tests.
I don't want to hear you, 'cause you cannot master the stress.
All right, so it's the first day of school in the county that I live in and the surrounding counties, so I would imagine it is similar like that throughout the country, although the academy that's attached to the facility that I work at, they don't start till next month, so there may be some schools out there, especially up in the Northeast, that don't start till later on, but you're either in that boat or you're approaching being in that boat, so I thought it would be pertinent to talk about conditioning and conditioning tests. It seems like I do one of these episodes every single year, but without fail, nothing ever changes. So I think I will continue to do these episodes until we're able to break through to some of the coaches. All the kids that I have that I'm not going to see for like another 8 months because, that's a whole different topic. But the way that sports and youth sports work today, they're all talking about the conditioning tests that they're going to have when they go to report. And I'm not against finding out if your athletes are in a position that they need to be in order to excel for the season, to see who's done the work in the offseason and who has not done the work in the offseason. However, I will say there are 3 reasons why we need to just do away with conditioning. We're going to dive kind of deep into this throughout this episode today. But 1, the best possible way to conditioning test your athletes is to have them play the game. It is the same movement skills, the same sports skills, the same energy systems. It's the same demands. It's the same efforts. It is quite literally the same everything. The reason that you condition and get ready to play is to play. So what better way than to have your athletes go out and play their sport, right? If the kids can't keep up, chances are they didn't do the right things in the off season. And if the kids are keeping up, then chances are they did do the right things in the off season. There's no need to quantify how in shape they came. Right, which leads me to my next point. Are you as a coach going to do anything with this information, right? If you have an athlete who showed up and they fail the conditioning test, yet they're a stud, right? They're one of your best players. Are you going to sit them? Chances are probably not. Are you going to use it as a way to tell them, hey, you need to make some changes? And yeah, you might, but odds are that athlete didn't do anything in the offseason. They're not going to do anything now. And with the load of practice and games coming up, them adding in more conditioning is probably the worst possible thing that they can do. Are you going to schedule practice any differently based on the outcomes of these conditioning tests? Are you going to use what happened in this conditioning test to say, all right, well, we're going to do X, Y, or Z in an effort to get to where we need to be? I rarely see coaches do this, so my guess would be no. So it's not the best way to kind of test your athletes, right? It's not something that we're going to do anything with. I'm not going to take this information and say, all right, well, he got 6.5 on the beep test, so we're going to try to make sure that we can get him to a 7.1, and this is how we're going to do it. No, you see the number, and you're like, all right, well, he's out of shape, which you could have seen just by having them play the game. But the third reason here is kids get hurt. You're talking about going from either training in the offseason or not training in the offseason to playing a sport, right? You can train all off season, but when you get on the field, it is a different level of compete for most kids. Even the kids that work really hard in the gym during the off season, their level of compete is not quite as high as when they're on the field doing something that they love. So already the load, not a load that we can measure, but the load on the field is already high enough, right? We don't need to add in another conditioning test that is designed to drive them to the point of total and utter exhaustion. That's how kids get hurt. The kids who did not do anything in the off season, right? They're not going to make it through this conditioning. And the kids who did do things, right? They're not they don't need it. So I don't see the point in it. And this also goes along with just regular conditioning. I don't know a coach in the area that is a youth sports coach who doesn't say, all right, well, we've got 30 minutes of conditioning at the end of practice, right? It's just universal at this point. But again, the kids who did things during the offseason don't need that. And the kids who did not do anything during the offseason are not going to make it through that. What your job as a coach needs to be is to schedule practice, make it demanding, and make it challenging. Again, because it's the same movement skill, it's the same sports skill, same efforts, same energy systems demands, same times. It's the same everything that this athlete's going to need in order to succeed on the field of play. So if you're, and then like, I guess this is another thing we could drop here. When kids know that they're conditioning at the end of practice, watch their level of compete drop substantially during practice because they know they've got to leave something in the tank. Like I did it growing up. All the kids I work with now do it. It's just what happens because these kids aren't stupid. They're not going to work their bag off in practice and knowing that at the end of practice, they've got 30 minutes to an hour of conditioning. Like it's just, it's an exercise in futility as a coach. And today, right now that that's kind of out of the way, today we're going to talk about the various effort levels and times and needs for these various sports coupled with the typical conditioning, either test or conditioning like modalities that coaches use in an effort to get their athletes ready for the field of play. All right, so what are the demands of these sports, right? What are the shift times or like play times across the board? And if I sound a little funky right now or I sound like I'm getting out of breath, we had a COVID breakout in the house and we're all just getting over it. So I don't feel very good today. I'm a little beat down and I'm a little short of breath from just standing here. So actually that's another thing. If you do have athletes who are coming back from COVID, understand that their capacity to do work is going to be almost non-existent for a little while. It usually takes about like 7 to 15 days for them to get back to where they need to be. So when those athletes come back in, do not have them going all out. I can attest to the fact that, again, just standing here and talking, I'm a little out of breath. I can't imagine having to play a sport and then condition and all that on top of that. And with COVID kind of going around right now, that's something to keep kind of in the back of your mind. So we're going to start off with hockey, right? So I've done an entire episode on this sport and the conditioning demands for the sport. So I'm not going to get too crazy deep into this, but just understand that hockey is mostly a lactic, right? It is not really aerobic at all, though you could make the argument that the sport over the course of a game, right, becomes aerobic in some capacity. But shift times are going to be anywhere from about 35 to 65 seconds. Your centers are going to be closer to 35. Your defensemen are going to be closer to 65. And your wingers are going to be in the neighborhood of like that 45. Hockey's a 45-minute sprint. It's really not, because only about 14% of the time that they're on the ice is spent at like high levels of effort. The rest of it is spent in a 2-foot glide or skating backwards, that 14% includes skating backwards, because I assume if we're going backwards, we're going pretty hard. But everything else, the other 80 some odd percent of the shift is spent like medium intensity, 2-foot glide, standing, doing nothing, right? So we really need to be very powerful for very short bursts. We need to be able to do it over and over and over again. We don't need to be moving 100% for 45 seconds. That is a total exercise in futility and an absolute waste of your time. We're going to go over all this at the end of this episode. Baseball. It's actually pretty interesting. An at-bat at the youth level is roughly 1 to 2 minutes. But the amount of time that the ball is in play, on average, is 5 to 7 seconds. You could even make the argument that it's like 1 to 7 seconds, because a pitch is, quote unquote, the ball in play. But 5 to 7 seconds. And softball is not that far off. It is roughly 4 to 6 seconds. Now, here's the kicker. When it comes to baseball and softball, less than 30%, less than 25% of the time the ball is in play, right, is a double or a triple. Every other play in baseball, so you're talking over 75% of the time, it's a single, a walk, or a home run, all of which don't take more than, a walk is obviously I don't have to try. A home run, I get to jog around the bases. And a single, I may have to go all out, but it's not going to be for more than a couple seconds, right? So we're 4 to 6 seconds, and the vast majority of the time, it is the amount of time it takes to go from one bag to the next, all right? Tennis at the youth level is 4 to 6 seconds. On hard court, it's actually slightly less than that. So we're talking less than 4 seconds on average for a point that includes, like aces and things like that. So there are times where like you may not move at all. And then there are times where, you are going to work more than 6 seconds, but it's so like outside of the average, that your goal should be to be conditioned for 4 to 6 seconds at a time. Lacrosse is very much like hockey, but the shift times at the youth level tend to be 60 to 90 seconds. And the professional levels, it's more 45 to 60. But during this time, it's very much like hockey, where there are intermittent bouts of all-out effort. Now, the only difference between lacrosse and hockey is going to be that lacrosse players can't glide. They have to jog or run to get anywhere on the field. So, you make the argument that there's a little bit more time of quote-unquote effort there. Football at the youth level is anywhere from 4 to 6 seconds on a play. And then a play clock's going to be, I want to say, like 25 seconds at the youth level. So you're talking about like 4 to 6 seconds of all-out effort, followed by 25 plus seconds of active recovery. Basketball is a little bit different. Basketball, we're talking about 15 seconds of like possession time. But when your possession is up, you don't get to relax. It's actually harder to be on defense than it is to be on offense. I forget who it was I was listening to, because I played basketball growing up. Used to say you can't rest on defense, you got to rest on offense, right? So when you have the ball, you can kind of stand around, and you're not standing around, but the effort level can be a lot lower if you're not directly involved in the play. But when you're on defense, heads on a swivel, you're moving around quite a bit. So we'll say like 10 to 15 seconds of like effort at a time. And really, it's probably only 3 to 5 seconds of all out effort at a time, but you're doing it over and over and over again. Again, because on basketball, or in basketball rather, there's like very little dead play, and you don't like change. You don't, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't like shift change on the fly like you would in like a lacrosse or a hockey. Softball, we went over that one. Volleyball is about 5 to 8 seconds at the youth level for a rally or like a point. So you're talking about 5 to 8 seconds, followed by, I don't know, probably 10, 15 seconds of like active recovery, where they're all high-fiving and getting back into place and getting the ball to the server so that they can go. Again, in volleyball, you could make the argument that you're getting a lot more rest when you have the ball than when you don't, because when you don't have the ball, you don't get to choose when to serve the ball. Trying to think, we had soccer on here. What did I do? Where did I put that? All right, so when I was looking at soccer was, I don't know why it's not written up here. Soccer was 20 to 30 seconds of like possession time. And again, soccer is one of those things where you may be moving just continuously, right? Or you could be sat back a little bit. If you're on defense and you have a very talented offensive team, you might not move around much at all. But 20 to 30 seconds is about the possession time on average at the youth levels. And you could say, again, it's probably very similar to hockey and basketball in the sense that it's like maybe 5 to 10 seconds of all-out effort at a time, followed by moderate intensity running and playing. So a little bit different than a hockey or a lacrosse, but overall, like still looking at short bursts of energy over and over and over again. All right. So to summarize all that up, most of these sports, right, we need more of an alactic-lactic type energy systems development than we do a lactic or like anaerobic, aerobic type. But damn near all of these sports focus in their conditioning and their conditioning tests on anaerobic/aerobic type conditioning, which is a travesty. And we're going to start off right now with the various kind of conditioning tests and conditioning tools that coaches use throughout the season. All right, so we're going to go in the same order here that we went previously. We're going to start off with hockey. And now for some reason, I cannot figure it out. The most common conditioning test in hockey is the beep test. Now, here's the problem. The beep test gives you a roundabout number for your VO2 max. At the NHL level, what they found is that guys who do well on their VO2 max test tend to not make it at the NHL level. And the reason for that is because it's the total wrong energy systems. So a beep test is measuring things that you will not need in the sport of hockey. I say you will not need it. You still need like an aerobic base, but it doesn't need to be that high. The other conditioning test for hockey is a 300-yard shuttle, which is like 25-yard splits 6 times. So you're going down and back 6 times, 25 yards. And the goal is to measure anaerobic output, right? So you should be able to finish it sub 60 seconds if you're like in moderately good anaerobic shape. And they'll run them twice. Actually, I have an athlete this year. They're running 3 of them with 90-second rest periods in between each one. And I just want to know how many of these kids are going to fall out, get hurt, or have to get transported when they do this, because that's an insane test. And chances are they're doing it outside. Not a good conditioning test. And again, it's not going to give them any information that's valuable, because hockey is alactic, lactic. It is alactic first. Remember, we talked about 30 to 65 seconds of shift time, but only 14% of that time being spent at a quote unquote high like intensity. We don't need 60 seconds of all out effort over and over and over again. It doesn't work that way. You're going to be a mediocre hockey player if you're good at that test. Baseball, base running is like a very common one. And a mile run. I still have guys that play baseball that do this stupid mile run. Again, like we talked, the ball is in play in softball and baseball anywhere from 4 to 7 seconds. A mile is going to take these kids, most of them, if they're good baseball players, it's probably going to take them 10 plus minutes, because it's the wrong energy systems. But it is moderate paced movement for 8 plus minutes, right? That is not baseball. That is not conducive to success in baseball. That is a stupid test. Baseball is quite literally, whether you're throwing the ball or hitting the ball or running bases, all out effort for that like 4 to 7 seconds. Same with softball. So to measure our conditioning in the form of a mile is moronic. It is stupid. It is a waste of your time, and it will actually make your athletes worse. And that's for pitchers too. The next one is tennis. A tennis, like a common one in tennis, especially at the youth levels, if they don't have like the ability to run a VO2 max test, is a Cooper 12-minute run. Now, what this is, it's almost like fartlek training, where you're just trying to cover as much distance as you can over the course of 12 minutes. And that's going to give you a score. If you have the athletes do this 4 to 6 second sprints at a time, followed by like active recovery walking, it's not like the worst test. However, the variations in effort, right? So some kids who are like great distance runners could operate at a pretty high level of like running that whole time. Whereas a kid who is going to be better suited to tennis, who can sprint real hard for 4 to 7 seconds and then take 8 to 12 seconds of rest and repeat that effort over and over again, right, is going to be more suited towards tennis than the person who can maintain like a high mile pace for 12 minutes. So like, I think it's probably on the list of these things a better test than most, but it's still like not a great test. When you have a bunch of kids, I get it though. It's the same thing, same reason the beep test gets used. Next sport. Also, and then tennis will often do like mile runs and stuff, and that's another stupid thing, because sport of tennis is not moderate pace for lots of minutes. It is all out effort for short periods of time, and you play right in a box that's, God, I don't know the dimensions of a tennis court, but it's not all that far. You're taking like 4 or 5 steps when you're younger, maybe 6, 7 steps at most to get from anywhere to anywhere on the court. And you're doing it as hard as you can. So these mile runs are dumb. Lacrosse, like you'll get like some shuttle runs, some like mile runs, again, another stupid test. And the beep test, while the beep test probably has more value and merit when it comes to lacrosse, it still doesn't give you a great number as far as like your conditioning goes. Football, 300-yard shuttles and gassers, right? So you're talking like 110s or like a 300-yard shuttle, right? So a football play is like 4 to 6 seconds, maybe 7 seconds on average, right? A 300-yard shuttle is going to take you 60 seconds. So like, what are we doing? Like, that's a stupid test. Gassers are the same way, right? So even like a 110, let's say we're running 110s, because that was like what everyone did back in the day even at the Power 5s or the Power 4s, I guess now. They would run like 16 110s, right? And the bigs had to do it sub like 19 seconds. The big skill had to do it sub 17 seconds, and the skill guides had to do it sub 15 seconds, which is all greater than the typical play of a football play. So it's stupid no matter how you cut it up. Basketball, suicides are super common. The beep test again rears its ugly head. That's another test. The beep test probably has a lot more value when it comes to basketball. But the problem is, again, basketball, while the effort levels may be longer, it's still intermittent bouts of all-out effort and not like pace running, right? So, take that for what it's worth. Softball, again, base running sprints and the mile run. For baseball and softball, like the base running, like that's good conditioning. It's something they'll need, with 75% of youth baseball like plays being a single, right? Running one or two bags at a time is actually as sports specific as you can get. So that's not like the worst thing. But these stupid mile runs have got to go. Volleyball, they do, again, distance running like a mile, beep test, and like shuttle runs or suicides. But again, the beep test, like these plays are like 5 to 8 seconds at a time. It is stupid to find someone's aerobic conditioning capacity when they need to be powerful for 5 to 8 seconds at a time at most. Soccer, Cooper test and the yo-yo test. I'll be honest, like soccer is a little bit different. I would say soccer is probably the one sport, and you could maybe make the argument for basketball, where like an aerobic base is actually a lot more important than the vast majority of these other sports. But you could still break it down to the fact that you have possession 20 to 30 seconds at a time. And during that time, how often are you going all out, and how often are you kind of active recovery walking? How often are you standing? There's a lot of things that go into this. You can't just look at the play times. You have to look at the effort times and all that. So I'm not at liberty to say whether either of these two tests are the best, but I think when it comes to soccer, and again, I'll say basketball as well, there's more of a value in having a little bit of an aerobic base, just due to the fact that the play pretty much never stops and you're constantly moving. So there is an aerobic component to both of these sports. All right, so we've gone over the conditioning needs and the typical conditioning tests and tools that coaches use. And I've decided and hopefully laid out my case here as to why they're stupid. But what should you do if you're a coach or an athlete trying to get ready for these sports now that the season has started, right? I hate to say it, but the season has started. It's kind of too late. Your workload is going to be very high right now. If you can get in the gym and ease your way into it to like training a couple times a week, that is an amazing thing. It will pay nothing but dividends down the road for you. But adding more work in right now, right? If you're somebody who didn't do the work in the offseason, you're not prepared, adding in more work right now is going to probably put you in a position to get hurt, right? Your training camps or whatever is all high volume. That's how these coaches design it, to get everybody in shape. So like you got to be kind of careful. As a coach, what you need to do is make these practices demanding, right? Make them things that kids want to try hard in, these drills, right? So that they'll get the adaptation of conditioning, because you'll condition while you're playing. Believe it or not, you actually like condition and get in better shape when you play games, right? So practice is like the perfect time for that. And you don't have to tack on extra time at the end to do like mindless nonsense. Kids aren't into it. As a coach, you're not into it. And to be completely honest, it just comes across as lazy coaching. Like you run out of shit to do. Like you don't have enough drills to make the kids like stay dialed in. And so now we're just going to condition because we have this time and we got to use it. Like as a coach, you've got to be better. You've got to plan these practices, right, to get the most out of your athletes. And sure, right now, early in the season, you've got to like strategize and like go over plays and do those kinds of things. But while you're doing that, like there can still be effort. They don't have to be just like walking through plays. So if you're a coach, please don't do these dumbass conditioning tests. If you're an athlete, don't feel like you need to add like extra work to your like load right now, because it may not be the best thing, especially if you came in like unprepared. If you came in prepared, go balls out in practice. Like that's going to be how you get into better game shape. I get kids all the time throughout the summer, like it'll be their first time back playing their sport. And they're like, man, I felt like kind of tired. And I'm like, well, yeah, you haven't done this in 3 months, right? You are gym conditioned and you are like speed endurance conditioned and you have high work capacity, but you have been away from this game for a while. It's going to take a little bit of you being on the field, right, to feel kind of normal again. And usually, honestly, it's like 2 or 3 times and these kids are like totally ready to go. What I do with my athletes is a speed endurance thing. And I'll do an episode on this too, because I've been getting a lot of questions about it, because I got actually pretty started posting a lot more stuff on social media of like the kids training. I haven't like been really big into that in the past, but this summer we posted a lot more of it, and I've got people asking me like why we do things a certain way, and maybe I'll do an episode about that. But what I do as a coach, as a strength and conditioning coach, is kind of work backwards, right? So a lot of coaches will say, well, you got to lay your aerobic base, and then you can start doing your anaerobic work, and then like that can feed into your like high effort stuff, right? Like your alactic stuff. And we do that to a degree. In the beginning of the summer, we do a lot of work capacity. We do a lot of high volume work. We do a lot of sled work. We do a lot of hard things for the sake of doing hard things so that we can lay that anaerobic base, right? Which does create an aerobic base over time. And then as we get closer to the season, it becomes a lot more like speed endurance. So we're doing, deadlifts at like 30 to 35% with some band tension for sets of like 10, and we're looking for a bar speed of like 1.1 to 1.3 meters per second. That is an athlete being able to produce and replicate an all-out effort over and over and over and over and over and over and over again for upwards of 100 reps paired with like another 50 jumps throughout the training session. That is how we get into shape. And it's funny because every single kid that trains with me over the summer, when they go back to their sport, they will all finish in the top like 1 to 5% of their team when it comes to conditioning. And we don't do anything that would be considered conditioning throughout the year or throughout the off season. Just because, again, like I look at conditioning differently. We work, I guess, what most coaches would think is backwards. We replicate high intensity over and over and over and over again to create our aerobic base, whereas a lot of coaches will create an aerobic base into an anaerobic base into the high level work. And like I said, we kind of do that in the gym, but it's a little bit different to where we don't have to spend our time sprinting over and over and over again and going for shuttle runs and things like that, because we can get that effort out of the kids and the athletes in a totally different way that, in my opinion, works significantly better than going the other way. But that's an episode for another time. Maybe we'll do that next week. But just to take home here, if you're a coach especially, please like rethink these conditioning tests, because you're taking a lot out of your athletes that could be used for other things. Chances are you're not even attacking the energy systems demands that you need. And then on top of that, you're more than likely not going to do anything with this number. Like, you're just not. You could throw the kids out on the field or the ice or the court and see who's in shape, right? That is the easiest way to do it. Have them go play, and we'll see kind of who's left standing at the end. Like, obviously, that's not what we want. We don't want kids falling out. But you'll see the kids that can, like, survive and thrive in that game, and the kids who can't. And that will give you a significantly better idea of who's in game shape and who's not. So I think that's it. This is a longer one today. Like I said, maybe next week I'll do a breakdown of like the way that we condition, just to kind of give you an idea, because like I said, I had a lot of questions the past couple months on social media, at least. I guess I'm doing this one at the end today. Go buy a book, Dynamic Effort Method for Athletes. We actually talked about a little bit of that just now when it comes to our conditioning. That's what we utilize for conditioning. And then if you're a hockey guy, Total Hockey Training, there is so much information in here. It's like 300 pages. I even break down conditioning and like training windows and why the LTAD and the ADM are like backwards and not worth really using anymore and what you should do instead. It's like a whole chapter on various jumps. It's a good book. Go check it out on Amazon. I'll put links in the description to the 3 books. Also Simple Strength that I have written. And I think that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. The email address is in the, at least on YouTube, in the description. It might be when I upload this to Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. I hope you learned something. If you're a coach, I hope you're not going to test your athletes or waste time conditioning when you could be better, when that time could better be spent doing a million other things. And we will see you next time.
I don't want to hear you, 'cause you cannot master the stress.